Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming. We're two guys who aren't qualified to talk about anything, besides talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And today, we're coming to you with a podcast that is purely about some stuff that we think is really cool. We are recording this a day after the article dropped, revealing all of the new Skaven models that we're going to be getting when the Battle Tome drops here in, some number of weeks, maybe a month. And simply put, it's so cool. We're just going to talk about Skaven for a whole episode and why, one, they are so incredibly cool as a faction, and I think that they are one of the best factions Age of Sigmar has. And then two, how this new redesign has helped them, and how we feel about it. Because I'm going to be honest, while Skaven has a wonderful flavor, it always has, they've had some challenges model-wise. And it has made them hard to get into, and maybe a thing I have outright recommended people not play. So it's an interesting time to watch that hopefully change. And I think it's worth talking about, because John is a Skaven diehard.
I turn it to Skaven radio constantly. Just 997 Warpstone radio, let's go.
And I am usually not a Chaos guy, but I got to admit, I love the Skaven. Of all the Chaos dudes, I think the Skaven are the most compelling. And that's because I read Gotrek and Felix before I knew what the hell a Warhammers was. And I just thought those little rat dudes were weird and cool. So I was red-pilled way too early, so to speak. But first, we've got to talk about hobby time and games played. All right, John. I'm going to ask what you've been up to, but judging by how empty your background is, I have an idea.
Moving. I don't know if it counts as hobby time as games played, but I have been packing up all of my hobby materials, packing up all of my models, packing up everything, getting ready, even writing stuff for JoeHammerCon. And then after that, I've packed a bag for that and packed my models into their movement cases for that specifically. But the rest of everything else is just getting ready to move. The 2 weeks of JoeHammerCon and the week after. The week of JoeHammerCon and the week after. Those 2 weeks, it's going to be all moving for me. So it's just, I don't have time to paint or build models. It's killing me because I really want to work on Skaventide already. I have the models. I want to work on this thing, especially with the new releases, but I have to wait until after the move.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is time for once more Under the Breach, dear friend.
Yes.
Moving just sucks. Some people, like our buddy Corwin, loves moving, and I think he's a monster for that, because I find it exhausting.
Well, I used to love moving, right? When I used to just sort of vagabond my way across the states and just live in a different place every couple of months. That was great when I was younger, but I'm older and full of shit in my house. So I gotta there's so much stuff I gotta move. Moving's way easier and sounds way cooler when everything you own fits inside of a Jeep Wrangler. But when you have to get a truck because of how much stuff you have and you have furniture and other things, it becomes a much more daunting task.
Yeah, I don't know. Even when I was younger, I still didn't like moving. I will never forget when there was one move where it was my now wife who was doing her best, but she can't lift heavy. And then no one else showed up to help us move other than my one buddy Vic, who is a champion among men. And it was me, Vic, and a pull-behind trailer and a dozen ratchet straps to get this whole apartment moved in a single day. And we got it done. But boy, howdy, was it awful. So yeah, moving terrible. That sucks, dude. But when you get there, you can, relax and then build Manic Skaven on magic drugs.
Hopefully. Yeah, the move for me is probably going to be a little bit more harder because I'm still recovering from the accident. So, I have some pain points. But the light at the end of the tunnel for me is getting to build 80 clan rats and paint 80 clan rats, which is a weird thing to have at the light at the end of the tunnel. But, to each their own.
John, I think there are now some more lights at the end of the tunnel.
There's many lights. They're actually all glowing green eyes.
I think there's one colossal light at the end of the tunnel.
It's warpstone. Yes, yes.
Visit Scour. Yes, yes. Yeah, it sucks, but only one more podcast of no update. Well, maybe two. I don't know. We'll see. For me, I have been hobbying, less gaming, more hobbying. In response to some people saying we should like look into Infinity, I actually reached out around me because there's no like Infinity community at our shop. There was one apparently a while ago. It fell apart, and so I just started kind of poking around Discords and asking around. And a wonderful Warcore reached out to me and was willing to run a demo for a couple of us. And to get ready for that demo, I didn't want to be like, hey, run me my demo and bring a bunch of minis for me, please. Because, like, that just sucks. So I found an action pack for Hakkislam at a really good deal. And I have spent the past week getting that built and put together and figuring out metal models for the first time. Like, I've never dealt with them before. So that was interesting. Honestly, not as bad as I thought. Just a bit of a learning curve. And those models look pretty good. And then I got them done just in time to actually go demo Infinity, which we might talk about Infinity on a broader scale on a later episode. But the TLDR is that system is super interactive. But it is really helpful to have a guide to teach it to you, because it is so deep. So deep. And my big takeaway, walking away from it, is that my Alpha Seed is very cool and shoots rocket launchers really good. Big fan. So that was a lot of hobby. And I had enough fun with Infinity that I'm sort of inspired to try painting some of it. I found a really cool online paint scheme idea for Infinity miniatures that deviates a little from the base paint line. Like the base, like dark browns and then dark greens of Hakkislam. And I've got one of those minis that I built up primed and zenithalled, and now I'm working my way through painting it. So far so good, but my week got real busy after I started. But alas, things will slow after JoeHammerCon, I hope.
One can only pray.
It can't get heavier, so it will slow. But hobby has been happening, and games played. I imagine, though, it is going to pale in comparison to the amount of hobby John will have to do once all these new rats drop. Let's talk about it. John, turn on the far squeaker. It's time to talk about Skaven. Yes. The Musketeer. Why are Skaven great? And honestly, I think that intro that is off the rip is probably the greatest example of why Skaven are so incredibly cool. Because, like, if we're going to talk about this, for people who don't know who Skaven are, maybe you come from other game systems. Maybe you're new to Age of Sigmar. You don't know what the hell a Skaven is and why, we're so giddy about this. And I think it's worth talking about just why they're so beloved. And they are beloved. Well, beloved, I don't know. But they are beloved in the community. And despite having, up until now, incredibly old, incredibly expensive, incredibly hard to get a hold of models, some of which look like poodoo. They just look bad. And yet, people still love them. For John and I, at least, the answer to why is because their vibe is entirely orthogonal to the other stuff in Chaos, and in many ways, kind of orthogonal to Warhammer as a whole. Mm-hmm. However, despite being orthogonal, it is perfectly suited for the system in a weird way. Because on the surface, Skaven are, Chaos as you would expect. They are cruel, they are careless, they are absolutely maniacally evil. They want only for themselves. They will take power at any cost. Life means nothing to them. Everyone is a tool to be used for your gain. Very chaotic, right?
And there's and they all think this way. So there's like billions, and there's an untold numbers of this. There's the most numerous race in Age of Sigmar, with the most like amount of people, well, rat people, in like the different like things, and they can just do all sorts of weird, wacky things. And they all, like, if they would just stop backstabbing each other, would completely dominate the entirety of the Mortal Realms. But it is inbuilt in their entire personality to want to hurt each other for power. Like
they want to backstab everyone at all times.
Yes, they're the most selfish. They constantly want only themselves. And they've been sort of stylized, especially more recently with the 4th edition, as being sort of tied to ruination as a concept themselves. Especially with the horned rat. Great Horned Rat is now ascended to godhood. It is now the 5th Chaos God. So it is just entirely here. They are their own thing. They are completely separate from the other 4 Chaos Gods. They are doing their own circles and their own unique story within Chaos, which makes them so different from everything else happening in that super faction, while also being so uniquely Warhammer. It is the most unique thing to Warhammer Fantasy and to Age of Sigmar to come out. Like, I think, like, a lot of people believe the Stormcast Eternals are like the poster children for Age of Sigmar. I actually think it's Skaven. I think that if more people recognize Skaven than they do Stormcast because of video games and because it's extremely memeable. And they are just they are a fun faction because they're so miserably cartoonishly evil that you can just make fun of them. It isn't in a boring way. It's in a way that just is charming in a way.
Yeah, for me, they check a lot of boxes that 40k orcs do and sci-fi.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. They are wantonly brutal. They are wantonly dangerous. They are a cataclysmically dangerous threat wherever they walk. But also, God, some of them are having a really good time in it. And you can't help but kind of get it when you see from their perspective. I think orcs appeal to me more because it's more ha-ha, hee-hee, kind of like redneck hollerball. But for the Skaven, they're absolutely still having a manic fun time, depending on where you're at in the schemes. But, like, some of these people are just, like, some of these Skaven are just inventing insane new inventions every day of their life, and then field testing them constantly to see how they could get the biggest boom. And every time they get a new little tinker toy to work, I can understand the maniacal glee. Until one day you roll a 1 and then it explodes and you become base atoms and carbon. But, like, it's fine. It's fine. There's another guy right behind you. And I think that brings a bit of levity to like Age of Sigmar as a setting and to Chaos. Because let's be honest, a lot of Chaos is herder, brutal, very killy. Like, it's fine. It's cool. Everyone could be dour and broody and brutal. And it works most of the time, but it could be a little one note. It could be a little bland. And I think Skaven add a whole layer of memeability to that faction and to the game as a whole.
It's also Skaven are almost Chaos incarnate. Like, they are their own worst enemy while also making every situation they're in part of worse, while also causing untold destruction, and just for all sides in all ways. Much like to give orcs as another example, when you throw orcs into a conflict in 40k, they immediately make everything just more hectic. They just make the entire situation more aggravating. When you throw Skaven into a conflict in Age of Sigmar, everyone's just like, okay, what the hell? Like, a good example of this is during 2nd edition, when Nagash has this, like, intricate plan to, like, overthrow the Mortal Realms with his death ritual, that he's got this upside-down pyramid with a bunch of, like, this cool, like, necroquake stuff. And
he's gathering sand for millennia. I mean, like, literally millennia.
And how does this go wrong? How does this big nerd's plan get screwed up? A bunch of dumb Skaven chew holes through reality and end up interrupting his ritual by accident? You're ruining everything. Like,
I need to emphasize, this was not a cool operation to sabotage an enemy plan. These rats didn't even know it was happening.
This wasn't Rat Ops 6 or whatever. Like, This
They
was
purely went, I want to go somewhere cool, and then nommed their way somewhere, and ended up in a throne room and went, oh no! And then exploded because they are living things in the death's ritual circle, and then it backlash and ruined everything and saved the mortal realms entirely without meaning to. Oh god, they're so goofy, and I love them. They're so fun. They're definition of I'm here for a good time, not a long time. And I think that's great. And in a lot of ways, they're sort of like chaos destruction. Like it's kind of like in Age of Sigmar, right? If a destruction faction becomes ascendant, let's say you look at like Ironjawz, right? Ironjawz rule the realm. Ironjawz will never be capable of ruling the realm because they're going to kill each other as soon as everyone else is dead. As soon as all the humans are dead, the elves are dead, chaos is gone, the Ironjawz would just start beating the hell out of each other and they would never have a colossal society. That's the whole point. Mm-hmm. And I think for a lot of the chaos gods in chaos and their factions, they truly do want to rule the realms. And they want to make their own civilizations and societies built in their image, of whether that's Khorne or Slaanesh or Tzeentch. But I think Skaven are truly oblivion. Because Skaven would never be able to rule themselves. They would just tear themselves apart after they tore apart the world. And that cyclical nature makes them ever cooler to me.
And where that puts them in the beginning of 4th edition, as they have gotten a range refresh, and they have just gotten a bunch of new stuff to sort of inject new life into them, is this big campaign they released called The Slaughter at Hellcrown, which is like the big like global fight between the Stormcast Eternals and the new Skaven and the new Skaven Tidebox, in which everyone got to like play games and then input their victories, and like whoever came out as the winner would change what happened in lore.
Very cool. I love those things.
Skaven won, which means that this fortress city of Hellcrown is now occupied by Skaven. Stormcast have been put out of it, and the Skaven have access to a realm gate. It's just bad. Like, it's really
they can
bad.
Jump between realms reliably and quickly.
And that's not it, because also the other big things that are happening in Skaven land is, as we alluded to earlier, the Horn King became a Chaos God officially. And as he rose to become a Chaos God, he also created someone called Vizek Skor, Prophet of the Horned Rat.
We'll put the picture up here, and you could go see the article if you want to just read the whole article, but here is Vizek Skor. Like, look at how cool he is.
And he is basically a demon prince of the Horned Rat, right? So he is a Protean demon of ruin that, before the Vermin Doom, just was causing untold destruction that was only being quelled by prayers to the Great Horned Rat. He has now been sort of like regulated into this form by the Great Horned Rat and turned into the Prophet, into which he does like he rules over a bunch of Skaven, but rule is a light term. Really what he's doing is he's frothing many of them up into a death frenzy, because he's sort of like a demon prince of ruin in a way.
And then just sort of corralling them out into the world.
Yes. And one of the other cool things, and to note, there was no Skaven named characters previously, so now we have Skaven named characters, is a character named Grizzak Foulblade.
We had Skaven named characters. We had Thanquol.
We had Thanquol. Sorry, we had Thanquol, a single one, who is a leftover from Old World who sort of just came in, but not unique to Age of Sigmar. Right?
That's true. He did make it from Old World.
Yeah. So Grizzak Foulblade is this like new sort of claw lord who will absolutely throw clan rats completely into the grinder. But he believes that maybe doing that at all times is a bad idea. That if he can efficiently throw away his clan rats, that is better for his overall plan. And that is seen by many of the other Skaven around him as a charitable sort of mercy, which leads him to have a cult-like following of clan rats who will follow him because they believe that he actually sees value in their lives. He doesn't. And what makes him even more interesting is that he has a vermin lord trapped inside of a sword that he keeps on his hip that he has to make deals with to use that costs him time off of his life. Like this is old Warhammer design. Like this is old Warhammer like fantasy sort of design in a character, and it's great. And his sword's called Doomfang, which is like the most
That's
80s
so
metal
cool.
thing. It's so good.
I love that the bar for Skaven morality is so low. That going, I will let you die painfully for me tomorrow, anchors him as Mother Teresa for them. Like,
yes.
It's delightful. It's insanely evil, and I love it. And I like the mini. He's got like the little helper sycophantic rats on his side, like bringing his stuff and doing the whole "milord" sort of thing. I love it.
And then the other big thing that is coming out for Skaven that is like new, right? Because we're going to start talking about some of the redesigned models. We're going to talk about like some of the new stuff and why it's cool. The thing for me that I think looks the coolest of the new things besides the Prophet, because nobody can argue that Bloodborne boss looks cool, because it just looks cool. The Brood Terror, right? It is a monstrous nightmare for a molder.
Mm-hmm.
It is horrifying, but it is such a well-designed model. And it is another good example of why Skaven is unique, because this is truly, truly, truly terrifying. And this shows sort of like where they're at design-wise with this faction. And it's going to impart a bunch of new like diversity into the faction as a whole. And alongside it comes the Master Molder, which also has a similar design look to it. I mean, we can put both images up and you can compare the two. They look like, it looks like Mini-Me and Big-Me of the same, which is great.
Yeah, they're both sickly, they're both mutated, they're both like covered in boils. And it, again, for their sub-faction, which are clans, it completely tells you everything you need to know. That they look like they live in terrible, toxic goo. And you're right. It's delightful. I really like the man-catcher hook thing that he's using as a weapon. That's a nice touch. That's a nice little throwback to the old mini.
And then you're going to see some other clan molder stuffs coming out. Like you got the new rat ogres. You have like it's not a clan molder thing, but it is sort of like normal Skaven in the new Claw Lord on Calvary on Rat on Claw Lord on Rat.
Rat on Rat.
New Grayseer, new Engine Seer, yada. But the big thing that they're sort of re-releasing with Skaven is the Scryer line. It seems like they are focusing heavily on Scryer and Molder. Those two are just the big two sub-factions of Skaven they're pushing forward with. And here's where we're going to talk about a negative thing about the release. The revamp. Because this was such a large faction previously that some stuff had to get cut. Unfortunately, it looks like much of the Eshin stuff didn't get a redesign, and much of the Pestilence stuff didn't get a redesign. They're keeping Plague Monks, but they're seemingly getting rid of Pestilence, and they're sort of getting rid of Plague Priests, not the Plague Priests on Furnace, just the regular Plague Priests. And they got rid of one of the Eshin squads and kept one of the other ones, but the other ones have such old models that they're basically never going to get used. No one's going to go out and buy new Gutter Runners to run that unit because they're like 20-year-old models, if not older.
God, yeah, they look rough. Which is one of the downsides of Skaven. It's why we have recommended people not play them for so long. So much of this line is ancient. And with this huge overhaul, it fixes most of it, but there are some hangers-ons that feel a little odd and out of place now.
Yeah, and so once those eventually get updates, it'll probably be even better for the faction. But overall, if you're looking at like the mad science-y sort of Skaven, which is like the big Frankenstein-like monsters and the big crazy warp lightning ranged yada, and like just crazy mad scientist sort of Tesla cannons, that's the Skaven that seems to be doing really well. I mean, Verminus also looks pretty good, but it's always going to. It's just hordes of rats, right?
New Storm Vermin and new Skaven slaves, like
two, true. New clan rats
really
and new Storm Vermin, very good. But like, if you were looking for ninja rats or you were looking for like plague rats, you're gonna have some, but I think you would struggle to make a full army of just them. You probably need to include some other stuff.
And although I do think it kind of speaks to their new design direction, which seems to be mix and matching.
Yes, it does seem to.
Clans.
it does seem like trying to go all one of the clans is bad, and that you should probably try to mix at least two.
Mm-hmm. It seems very much like they want you to kind of pick 2 or 3, and then, bring a little bit of everything into the matches with you to have a more diversified army. Which
And overall,
I do think with all these new minis, a raid on a table would look incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's my plan. I have enough Skaven to run multiple armies of Skaven, and very much might be doing that for one of our later Warhammer cons this year. We might have our own Skaven tide, because will potentially have 3 people playing Skaven at an event. We can all just scheme
it's Skaven.
We can scheme in the corner and pretend to stab each other. It'll be great.
Final game is just 3 Skaven armies fighting each other.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And sort of the last thing we'll talk about here is not regulated to just Skaven, right? It is also going to affect the rest of the game. So it is about battle tomes, right? So the last thing to really talk about here is that they just said that battle tomes are going to get a redesign. And we don't know what that fully is going to look like, but we know part of it. And it's shown in this article, and there's these things called gamer editions, which are soft cover battle tomes that have just rules in them. Well, it doesn't say just rules, but it says all of the rules in one package with a cardboard envelope full of reference cards that is supposedly, my assumption, a budget version of a battle tome, because it's just going to not be a collector's piece at all, and is supposed to just sort of be a slimmed down, here you go, softcover book.
Which, I mean, I need to know more, but personally, I'm not opposed to it, because I don't think they have tried hard on battle tomes in a long while. I think most of them are just copy and paste jobs, which has made that big $60 price tag feel weird if I'm just paying for the copy and pasted lore from the last edition. Here, if I can cut out the lore and that price does significantly go down, maybe that's more bang for your buck and more compelling as an option. But obviously price will matter there.
Mm-hmm. And I think that no matter what they do, it's still going to be a little weird. Because almost every other game in the wargaming sphere is offering free rules.
Mm-hmm.
They are charging for tokens and charging for what these war scroll cards are, but they are not charging for the ability to play the game. And Warhammer still is, and that will continue being sort of a black mark on the games when trying to pitch it to new people. There's no way around that. Until those rules are free, it will always be a point of conversation when we try to teach a new person Warhammer, as opposed to something like Conquest or Star Wars Legion, that we go, yep, you really like this. The rulebook's $60, and your faction rulebook is another $60. Even if that drops to $30 for each, you're still asking someone to pay the cost of what was most of the time a brand new video game to just have access to the rules when other games are free.
Before minis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's a step in the right direction, depending on price, but we'll see if it actually fixes some of the core concerns. I want to know more. But I do think overall, the Skaven update is really good for them. And I think it takes that army from something I wouldn't recommend people play to one of the more compelling bang for your buck options if you're trying to just get an army on a good cost.
Yeah, Skaven Tide boxes are probably going to be going for pretty cheap for a while. They normally make a ton of them, so you'll be able to find them in stores. eBay will have them on there, and having 40 clan rats in that box is a great starting point. You don't need as many clan rats now as you used to. I struggle building lists with more than 80 at max out, so sometimes it's only 40, sometimes it's 60. And there's 40 that come in that box starter, so it's way easier to get into Skaven than it used to be. And that's great, because I think that they are a wonderful looking faction, full of flavor. And if you've been waiting on Skaven, now's your time. Now's the time of the rat.
Time of the great horned rat. And for people out there, we've obviously, a large portion of this is, we like the new models. But if you do have questions about Skaven, or maybe you're interested, but you're a little hesitant and you want to talk through it, feel free to put those questions down below, and we will do our best to help you through that, or message us on Instagram. That is always open. And we'll see if we can't address stuff if we missed some particulars in this. Or if you just have mechanical rules questions once the books comes out. I'm not a Skaven expert. John could probably get you there, though. We are always happy to help people join the Skaven Tide. For now, that has been all of our opinions, bona fide, and Kentucky Fried. We'll see y'all in the next episode.